All right, so trig equations, the mother of all problems. This is complicated, but when you break it down, at its core, it's actually not as difficult as it looks. You really just need two things: an angle and a quadrant. So this is the opposite of the previous lesson. In the previous lesson, I gave you something like this. I gave you an angle and a trig dude, and I said, all right, find me the number. So take the angle, figure out the reference angle, figure out the quadrant, and then you tell me the number. But this time it's the reverse. They're going to give you the number. You have to figure out the angle and the quadrants that it's in. So it's a little bit more complicated. So this first one, again, the idea: get the trig thing alone on the left and get the number on the right. Once you know the number, you look on the chart, you get the angle, then you figure out where it's at. So, and that depends on the sign, right? So let's do this first. You can always replace this with whatever letter it is to make it easier for you to solve, right? It's just a psychological thing. So just make it S. Subtract 5 from both sides. So you get 6S equals 8 minus 5 is 3. Divide both sides by 6. Now it's time, so we'll keep it as S for a minute. If you cannot tell me what 3 over 6 is without a calculator, I mean, this is an issue, all right? This is the people were getting this wrong in class. It was absolutely absurd, all right? So this is a half. So now you got to put what it really was. This S represents sine X. You're looking for X. You're looking for the angles. So all of that is just the first step. Trig dude on the left, number on the right. Now you look on that chart under the column with sine, and you look for that number. Well, there it is. The reference angle is 30 degrees. That is the only angle that will make that number. 45 makes a different number. 60 makes a different number. The invisible circle, right? There's my invisible unit circle there. I never draw the circle. It's kind of pointless. The numbers on the unit circle are 0, 1, and -1. So it's none of those either. So now that you know you're looking for 30, you got to figure out where. So how do you determine that? Remember what the letters stand for, right? I'm going to do this every time. All students take calculus or whatever. I like all students to travel continuously. The letter tells you who is positive. The A stands for everybody, right? All. Sine is positive, tangent is positive, cosine is positive. Well, I have a positive here, right? There's no negative in front of that. So I'm looking for all the places where sine is positive number. That's here, and that's here, right? Look, the letters match. The letters match, then you're positive there. If the letters don't match, you're negative there. Sine is negative here, and sine is negative here, right? The letters don't match. The S and the C, right? The first letter. Those letters aren't the same, those letters aren't the same. So you cross them out. So I'm looking for quad 1 and quad 2. Now, if you were to draw 30 degrees in quad 1, it's 30 degrees. But if you were to draw 30 degrees in quadrant 2, right, you got to figure out what this angle is. So you take 180 and you subtract the 30. So you get 150. I know it's a little sloppy, but those are the two answers. In quadrant 1, you got 30 degrees. In quadrant 2, 30 degrees is 150. So those two angles. And if you don't believe it, you can take the calculator. I know that 1 over 2 is 0.5, right? A half. I can do sine 150. And it will tell me 0.5. You could always very quickly on the calculator check that you got the right angle and that it's the right number and it's the right sign. All right, so we'll do a couple more. All right, so the second one, it's going to start to get a little bit more complicated. The principle doesn't change. You can take cosine and temporarily replace it with a C, just to make it easier for you. This is it. Now, you want this alone. So I need this on the other side, right? So you have to do the opposite of it. You have to subtract it, right? You have to subtract that from both sides. So then you get 2C, which is cosine, is negative radical 2. Now you divide both sides by 2. Now take the C and put the cosine back. This is very important. You got to put this back. This is not just C, it's cosine X. You are solving for X. X is an angle. So negative radical 2 over 2. So now I'm going to go down the cosine chart, and I'm going to look for radical 2 over 2. But what about the negative? The negative has nothing to do with the angle. It has to do with the quadrant. Quadrant tells you positive, negative. So you can just ignore the minus sign there and just look for that radical 2 over 2. I see it right there. So I know that the reference angle is going to be 45. Now the question is, where do I put that 45? Because the answer is certainly not 45. The cosine of 45 is positive radical 2 over 2. So that's not the answer. So I have to figure out what quadrants I'm in. Well, I already know that I'm not here. All stewardesses travel continuously. I'm not in quad 1. Everyone in quad 1 is positive. So this angles that you're looking for can't possibly be there. Now, in quadrant 2, so remember what I said about the letters. If the letters match, right, C and C, then he's positive there. If the letters don't match, then he's negative there. Right? You have a sine and S, the letters don't match. Cosine is negative in quad 2. Cosine is also negative in quad 3. Cosine is positive in quad 4. See, same letter. So you cross that out because I don't have a plus here, I have a minus. So I'm looking for quad 2. So I want 45 in quad 2. And I want 45 in quad 3. So there's formulas to do this. If you're in quad 2, you just take 180 and subtract the angle. If you're in quad 3, you take 180 and you add the angle, the reference angle, right? And look, I'll show you it makes sense. Put 45 here, right? You got 90, 180, and another 45, right? So you have to do 180 plus 45. So this angle comes out to 225. Remember, you're solving for x, and these are angles in degrees. So put x equal, and over here you're going to get 180 minus 45 gives you 135. So these are the two angles that give you negative radical 2 over 2. Now remember, we did this in class, we got 0.707. So you can do cos 225, make sure it comes out. I mean, listen, why not? I know that radical 2 over 2 is 0.707, so do cos 225, and I should get negative 0.707. It's blurry, but I get it. Same thing, you can check, you can do cos 135, and you'll also get negative 0.707. Which is radical 2 over 2. All right. Only two answers. Why? Because there's two places where cosine is plus, and there's two places where it's negative. Right? We're not talking about values on the circle yet. We haven't done one like that. We will. Right? Sometimes you get a 0 or a 1 or a negative 1. And then you get answers like 90, 180. But when you're doing ones like these where the answer is 30, 45, or 60, you will always get two answers. Not more, not less. All right. It's always two. So I'm going to do number 3. So poof, there's number 3. This one's pretty simple to solve, right? You keep negative 4. Where tan is, put a t. Now be careful here. Don't do anything silly. You're multiplying. So you're going to divide both sides by negative 4. Those cross out, leave you with the t. The t stands for tan. Tan x. Never just write tan. That's a word. This is tangent. As soon as you put an angle there. Now, you're going to cross out the 4's, right? 4 divided by 4 is 1, but there's a negative there. That radical 3 stays upstairs. All right, so it's simple. Just divide both sides by negative 4, but just be careful about it. Make sure you have that negative and make sure you don't do anything screwy with this negative 3 and move it to the bottom because you'll get a different number. So now I'm going to look on the tan side. I have 1 over radical 3 and I have radical 3. This is what I want. Again, you don't have to worry about the negative yet. So my reference angle is 60 degrees. I know that by looking for the number radical 3 on my chart. This is why you have the chart. It's critical you have the chart or you can't even do this. All right, so now I just have to figure out where to put it. So again, all stewardesses travel continuously. This time, again, I'm looking for the quadrants where tangent is negative. That immediately eliminates quad 1. It cannot be in quad 1. Everybody in quad 1 is positive. So in quadrant 2, though, you see T and S. Tangent in quadrant 2 is negative. So this quadrant is cool. T and T. Ooh, look, a T there and a T there. Tangent is positive here. I keep making marks on the board. Tangent is positive in quad 3. I don't have a positive, so I have to cross that one out. C and T. T, C, right? Different letters. cosine, only cosine is positive here. Tangent in quad 4 is negative. So I'm looking for quad 2 and quad 4, right? So I got to take that 60 in quad 2. You know, you don't have to draw the angle. That's 60 in quad 2. That's the angle. 60 in quad 4 is all the way around. So in quad 2, you know, you don't have to do this. I'm just showing you what the angles look like. In quad 2, you're going to take 180, right? There's 180. And you're going to subtract the 60. And you're going to get 120. In quad 4, right? If you were to go all the way around, it would be 360. So you take 360 and you subtract the 60 and you get 300. So those are the two answers. Again, get tangent alone, look at the number, look at the chart and pick your reference angle, figure out the quadrants that it has to be in. It's always 2 of them, and build the angles, right? The rules, I'll put the rules in the notes, but the rules are pretty simple. Like I said, in quad 2, you subtract from 180. In quad 3, you add to 180. And then in quadrant 4, you just subtract from 360. All right, so again, I'll try to do a few more. Okay, I jumped to 10. Really, 10, I didn't get that far. It doesn't matter, because you need to be able to know what to do when you see this. I have cosine squared equals 1. Weird. So you got to take the square root of both sides, but don't forget your plus minus. Very important. Always make sure the plus minus when you take square root. So you get c is plus and minus the square root of 1 is 1. That gives you two different things. That gives you that the cosine of x can be 1, or the cosine of x can be minus 1. Right? There's two different possibilities. You can get a positive 1 or a negative 1. That's what happens when you take the plus minus square root of 1. So those numbers are not here. But there's a 1 there. But that's for tan. That's not for cosine. So here's where you need the unit circle, right? That invisible circle of radius 1 centered at the origin, right? You take a circle, you put it in the origin, right? 0, 0 in the middle. And then you go up 1, down 1, left 1, right 1, right? The radius is 1. So you go 1, up, down, left, right. So that's where I got these points from. So, you know, you follow the alphabet here. The cosine is the x coordinate. The sine is the y coordinate because it's in alphabetical order. The letter C comes before the letter S. So this is why I put CS, CS. So you're looking for all the places where you see a 1 with the cosine. There's a 1, there's a 0, there's a negative 1, and there's a 0. So I see a 1 with the cosine at 0 degrees and at 360. Right? Those angles start and stop in the same place. I mean, I'm not saying they're the same angle, but I mean, they're in the same spot. So you count them. And now there's no other place where you get a 1 for cosine. That's the only place where cosine, the value of cosine is 1. So now you got to look for where you have a negative 1. No, no, yes, no. See, cosine here at 270 is 0. But at 180, you get a negative 1. So 180 degrees. So you get 3 solutions to that. Now, if you forgot to do the plus minus, then you'd be missing this one and you'd be missing this answer. So it's important that you have the plus minus there, or you know, you lose part of the answer. All right, so that's how you do number 10. I think I'm going to jump and go back and do 6. Okay, now I did one similar to this in class, and I pointed out my obnoxious thing of if the product of 2 things is 0, then, and you should be hearing my voice in your mind saying, one of them must have been 0. You multiply 2 things and you got a 0. So either the first one is 0 or the second one is 0. One of them must be 0. Right? You get 2 different equations. Set this one equal to 0, set that one equal to 0. This one is already trig guy number. So I can actually, I'm going to solve this one right off the bat. I'm going to go in my circle, right? Look, no zeros here. There's no zeros here. Cosine is not 0 for 30, 45, or 60. Those are different numbers, right? Radical 2 over 2, so on. So the only place you're going to see a 0, a 1, or a negative 1 is when you land on an axis. They call those quadrantal angles. You don't need to know that shit. All right, so when you land on an X or Y axis, you get a 0, a 1, or a -1. So I'm looking for 0 for cosine. No. 90, yes. There's my 0. So 90 is one of them. Go to 180, cosine, -1, so no. Go down to 270, aha, 0. So there's two answers for that. At 90 degrees, the cosine is 0. So if you did cosine 90 on the calculator, I guess I have to prove it to you. I don't have to, but if I do cosine 90, I get 0. If I do cosine 270, I get 0. That's what you're doing. You're looking for the angles that give you that number. So this one you got to solve, right? Subtract 1 from both sides. You get 2s equals -1. Divide away the 2. Remember, take the s and replace it with sine x equals -1/2. All right, so this is very similar to number 1, except we had positive 1/2. So I know for 1/2, I get 30. So my reference is 30. This time my quadrants are going to be very different though. Now I'm looking for the quadrants where the value of the sine is a negative number. Sine is positive in quad 1, cross it out. Sine is positive in quad 2, cross it out, right? You got to cross out the ones where sine is positive because sine is not positive. It's -1/2. So I must be in 3 and I must be in 4. So you got to be in Q3, Q4. In Q3, you're going to take 180 and you're going to add 30. That gives me 210. Quad 4 is the easy one. You're going to just subtract from 360. Take 360 minus 30, and that gives you 330. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is they start getting cute. They start using 90s and 270s. 180. 180. All right, if you're in quad 2, it's 180 minus the reference angle. If you're in quad 3, it's 180 plus the reference angle. See, 180. Not 90, not 270. Quad 2, 180 minus the reference. Quad 3, 180 plus the reference. And quad 4 is even easier. It's just 360. Take away the reference. Those are the rules. Those are how you find the angles. All right. Like I said, I'll try to put these in the class notes. I don't have these notes created. They may never get created. But at least you have it in the video. All right. I think I'm going to do one more. It's already long enough. All right. I jumped back to 4. So you have -10 cosine equals 5 radical 3. So to get c alone, you have to divide both sides by -10. Now those cross out. So you're going to get cosine x. Now again, you have 5 over 10. If you don't recognize that this is a half, and this is ridiculous, all right? Put the 5 into the 10, you get a 2. Don't forget the negative. So you get negative radical 3 on top, 2 on the bottom. Well, I've seen that number before. Yes, you have. It's right there. Go down cosine and look for radical 3 over 2. So you get 30 degrees as your reference. Play the same game we've been playing again and again and again. What quadrants is it in? It's negative, so it's not in quad 1. If it was positive radical 3 over 2, it would be in quad 1, and it would be in quad 4. So one of your answers would be 30, because in quad 1, 30 is 30. So that was like the very first one I did. So you can't be in quad 4 because cosine is not negative here. Cosine is positive in quad 4. So I have to cross that one out. So I have to be in 2 and I have to be in 3. So you're in quad 2 and you're in quad 3. In quad 2, you take 180, subtract 30.
Why are you trying to make me upset? You're not old like this.
So you get 150. To do quad 3, you take 180 and you add 30 and you get 210. So again, these problems, they are as complicated as you make them. All you need is a reference angle and the quadrants that those angles live in. And then you just figure them out. All right, it's not super hard. But the tricky part sometimes is this, is getting the trig guy alone on the left and the number on the right. If you do that part okay, everything else is just reading the damn angle off the chart and then figuring out where it is. And then once you know where it is, building angles. All right, so hope this is helpful.